A very good morning to you and welcome to Morning Express. My name is Trix Ingado. It's yet another day where we take you through the very latest in the news, local and international. And of course, the biggest story this morning has to do with the economy, and we shall be digging into that with expert XN Iraqi joining us later on just to figure out what on earth is happening. Welcome.
Well, so many questions around the economy, especially with the hike in fuel prices. But we'll definitely delve deep, as Trix mentioned. Apart from that, on Person of Interest, we have a sit-down with the Governor of Meru County, Kiraitu Murungi, just sharing his insights on his long life in political career, and also a couple of insights into what exactly he does apart from politics. So that and much more coming your way. Also on Political Point, we'll definitely get to delve deeper into some of the intrigues surrounding the Machakos by-election that's slated for Thursday on the 18th of this month, even as more woes seem to face the deputy party leader and the deputy president, Dr. William Ruto. That and much more coming your way. Good morning. I'm Jesse Rogers.
Okay, I'm definitely looking forward to that segment, Person of Interest, as well as what's making headlines in the field of politics. As I usually say, it is never a dull day. But before we delve into local news, let's take a look at what's making headlines internationally and see what's happening around us in the region as well as further beyond. And this morning, as per usual, we're going to start off with Uganda. The Daily Monitor this morning is leading with a political story. We are being told what election violence suspect shot dead in police cells. Take a look at that and tell us what you can and figure out what is making headlines in that part of the country. U.S. puts a new ADF leader on global terrorist list. The ADF rebel group has previously been sanctioned by the U.S. Department of the Treasury and the United Nations under the UN Security Council. So still, this is another blow to that rebel group. Take a look at that and find out more with regards to what's happening with that. And then AG queries 600 billion shilling UNRWA spending and roads project. UNRWA says one of the funds none of the funds, whose expenditure was required by the Auditor General was stolen or abused. Corruption making headlines there. And the Ministry of Health is also explaining few COVID vaccination numbers. And this is a story that is cutting across. Even here in Kenya, there is hesitancy and a vaccine apathy that has been reported widely as the vaccination progress, initiative gets off to a very, very slow start. Far from that, let's take a look at what's making headlines on the opposite side. Police continue crackdown on those spreading fake news about President Magufuli's health. Now, a few days after Tanzanian Prime Minister Kassim Majaliwa responded to speculations about the health of President John Pombe Magufuli, the police force across the country has continued with its crackdown on those who have mentioned this piece or this bit of news on social media. And of course, speculation has been rife as to the whereabouts of that president, as well as, of course, what the security forces are doing there in response. Then Tanzania Vice President says the country is safe. All prayers for calls for prayers and unity. And then a Tanzanian woman has been arrested in Mombasa carrying 5 kilos of heroin. Police in Kenya are holding that woman. Miss Maimuna Amir is her name, who was caught with 5.3 kilos of heroin. The market value is 317.2 million shillings. Now, Roderick Mpogolo, acting as CCM Secretary General, has made the headlines. Find out more of what's making headlines, as well as Kenya has found itself here, where we are told Kenya has denied banning maize imports from Uganda and Tanzania over aflatoxin, as the East African community terms the decision unprocedural. Then in Rwanda, we are told a female condom. What is that? Apart from lack of availability and access, most women do not have information on the existence and usage of some sexual and reproductive products. Take a look at that and find out what that ignorance is doing in the battle against HIV. And then Bobby Wine arrested while leading protests. This happened yesterday. Find out what happened with that and the effects of his actions. The Ugandan politician and some supporters were demanding the release of people missing since that very hotly contested election. Far from that, the East African this morning is leading with Kenya, Tanzania enable multinationals evade taxes. Illicit financial flows cost African countries around 50 billion shillings, dollars per year. And then Bobby Wine still making headlines here, where he was arrested for protesting and demanding for the release of his supporters that are now cooling their heels in jail since, that hotly contested election, like I said earlier. Now, the CNN, last but not least, on the world page, they're leading with news from Asia. These Asian countries are giving dual citizenship citizens an ultimatum on nationality and loyalty. They're the people who are who have double citizenship are being asked to choose between those Asian countries and whatever other country that they are, of course, citizens to. And then Charlie Hebdo cartoon of Queen kneeling on Meghan Markle's neck sparks outrage. And this is not the first time that paper's cartoon has made headlines across the world and, of course, rubbed some the wrong way. Kushner surfaces with op-ed on Middle East, and Vatican says it will not bless same-sex unions, calling them a sin, and see Beijing's biggest sandstorm in 10 years. Then there's more news from on the coronavirus from Europe. We have Yemeni journalists freed from bail after Biden administration urged UAE to use influence for release. And last but not least, Burna Boy and Wizkid have won Grammys. Take a look at that. They have news on that. Why Burna Boy's Grammy award is a big win for Africa and its music stars. Right, let's now take a look at what's making headlines locally, and there's so much regarding to local politics. There is crime and also news on the rollout of the vaccine, as the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine that is supposed to be helping us battle coronavirus is facing headwinds, given that there's a lot of hesitancy. There's a trust issue with that. But let's take a look at the front pages. Just to start with, the Daily Nation is leading with the shocking murder of a key witness in a corruption probe. And then the Standard this morning, Jubilee ejects Ruto from top party post. Now, joining me this morning here in studio is James Gakuya, Member of Parliament, Embakasi North, as well as Philip Magal will be joining us via Zoom. He is a lawyer, and Musari Kahiga, a public policy analyst. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Far from what I've mentioned, another big story, of course, has to do with fuel. Fuel billions idle as Kenyans hit now skyrocketing oil prices. The government is sitting on at least 10 billion shillings in a subsidy scheme aimed at cushioning Kenyans from a high cost of fuel after it delayed its operationalization. Yesterday, an outcry continued over the sharpest increase in oil prices in a decade. So apparently this is not something that needs to be happening, given that subsidy that is supposed to be made available to Kenyans. And on page 3 of the Standard, we are being told more about that. Billions in fuel fund idle as consumers pay high prices. And of course, the Nation is also carrying this story, breaking it down and explaining how those prices, the price goes from the port all the way to the city and in all the parts of the country, and why the prices changes as it goes along the way. Now, I'll start with this story. Honorable Gakuya, what do you make of this?
Let me say, warnings have been made, and especially by the CS Treasury.
Yes.
Who maybe the last 2 months made a warning that we have to prepare as a nation to go hardship way. And probably the easiest route to nab Kenyans is only to touch issues to do with fuel.
Yes.
Because we understand that fuel is almost a crossboard, because fuel always attaches everybody, almost everybody.
Yes.
Anybody who commutes must use fuel. Anybody who has to transport any single goods has to use fuel. If it is matatu, has to use fuel. If it is lorries, has to use fuel. If it is vessels, has to use fuel. Anything that is movable most of them has to use fuel.
Yes.
And therefore, it is the easiest item to be touched to make some kind of gain in areas to do with in where the government may wish to get what you call easy money as quickly as possible. And you understand that, in fact, going that it is very easy also to get that money as the money is a liquid cash.
Yeah.
Because fuel is a liquid cash. But what I can say is that, in fact, it is coming up at a very difficult time, because this is a time when every other Kenyans is trying to crumble. Take into consideration that this country has not yet fully healed from the what we call COVID pandemic.
Right.
And Kenyans are of, yes, what is this happening at this particular time? But I would wish to say that even though we know that we have a lot of gaps in terms of our economic targets, I believe this is not the high time that we must take Kenyans into this particular route, because it is very painful, considering that everybody is crumbling.
Yeah.
And none of the businesses you can say that actually are back to normal. It's a time that almost everything is struggling. And I don't see why the government has taken a route that it is now that they must pin down Kenyans, which are already overtaxed. And let me tell you, sometimes you fail to understand, because surely there has to be what we call control. You cannot overtax your people beyond their level of control.
But Honorable Gakuya,
you may overtax your people to a manner that they cannot even be able to walk.
Yes, and so I'd like to draw your attention on page 10 of the Daily Nation. There's that breakdown of how the fuel prices have increased. And then on the side here, we have leaders oppose new price bill. One of the leaders being quoted here saying they should take cognizance of the fact that it is the ordinary citizen who bears the brunt of the high petroleum prices. Now, you're saying something similar, but you are a leader. So, I mean, if you're saying that, then who will speak for those ordinary Kenyans?
Let me say, it's unfortunate that, in fact, there was a bill which was brought to the House. And that bill actually had a lot of resistance from members. But I remember very well, that Honorable Raila Odinga whipped his team to support that particular bill to pass through.
Yes.
But through the clamor, the bill was purported to be an increase of 16%. But because of the clamor, the bill was reduced to halfway, and it was passed at 8%. Going by that, and it is just less than a year when that was given a note by the House. Now, considering that within 1 month, there is a rising of about 16 shillings per litre of petrol. This is totally telling Kenyans that actually where they are heading, there is no hope forward.
Okay.
And this is totally killing the hope of Kenyans. And I wish that, in fact, whoever is preparing this must reverse the gear and consider that this country belongs to all of us. Because there is no way you can tax beyond our level of control. Yes. How do you expect Kenyans to move forward with such a kind of tax? People will just fail to even to get to work to their jobs. People will even fail to transport their goods, because at the end of the day, every single penny of rising of fuel will be transferred to the user.
Okay, and I'd like to bring Mr. Musari into this conversation. Taxes imposed on commodity have made the Kenyan consumer carry the heaviest burden. Now, the burden is coming clearly from the outline in the Daily Nation, from the taxes and levies, and this solves the puzzle of the cheaper fuel prices in Dar and Kampala. And then there's what the leaders are saying, and more of that has been explained by Honorable Gakuya. What do you make of this problem that is causing quite a thorn in the flesh of a motorist in this country?
I think, Trix, it goes beyond motorists. It goes way beyond motorists. This is a key input area. You're talking about fuel. So when you're looking about, when talking about inputs in agriculture,
yes,
well, the tractors need it. If you're talking about the movement of goods from farm to market, then the trucks need it that are transporting. So the aggregate increment on the cost of living for Kenyans is beyond understanding. I think this is ill-timed. There's definitely going to be a time of austerity in this country. I'm on record before saying that Kenya is living beyond its means, has been living beyond its means for the last 7 or so years. And in my view, from an economical standpoint, it would be most prudent to start bringing in austerity measures. But should they be brought in by increasing the cost of life, of living to Kenyans? No. They should be brought in by reducing the amount of spending and wastage in government. That's my belief.
Okay, and we're going to be having a more deeper conversation on this one with as economist Exen Iraqi joining us later on towards the tail end of the show, just to help us understand why we have to dig deeper into our pockets to make sure that we can get around. And of course, this seeps into other sectors, as Mr. Musari has said, and it will be affecting prices, even when it comes to matatus and the food that is on our table. So many things are affected when fuel prices do go up. So stay tuned for that particular discussion. You don't want to miss that enlightenment. Far from that, there's a crime story that has made headlines both in the Standard and in the Daily Nation. In the Daily Nation, it's the front page story. It's the lead story, rather. The shocking murder of a key witness who wanted her dead. Body of lands official found in Ngong Forest. Pretty unfortunate. She's pictured on the front page. That is Jennifer Wambua, was to be cross-examined tomorrow on evidence she gave in court in a case in which the former government advertising agency boss Dennis Chebitwei and Lugari MP Ayub Savula and former PS Sami Itemere are charged with theft of 122 million shillings from the agency, and more details are on page 4. Honorable Gakuya, what do you make of this? I mean, land is quite an emotive issue, and it is said that this woman was quite unsettled even days before her demise, and now this has been discovered. What say you?
This is a very urgent matter, taking into consideration that you cannot distance this particular matter from the case that she was about to cross-examine tomorrow.
Yes, yes.
And going that actually those who are commenting about this, they are telling us that actually the lady was in a very discomforting situation in her last days.
Yes, and we're told she died a cruel death.
Actually, she must be undergoing a lot of threats. And what I would say is that our prosecution, and especially the DPP, must be prepared also locally to have what we call safety of prosecution of witnesses.
Yes.
Because this is a matter where one would wish not to have this particular witness to be cross-examined, and
yes,
therefore the best thing for that particular fellow was to execute this particular murder. And it is very ironic to find a situation that one has lost her life because of purely becoming a witness, a key witness in such a matter. So it's very cruel, and I can say it is very cruel indeed, if we shall be losing innocent people through this particular window. And therefore, it also tells you that actually this is a signal that we may not be getting what I would say proper evidence or the right evidence out of this particular kind of witnesses because of fear. And therefore, I would say the DPP must wake up and must make sure that, in fact, whoever is in a situation of such a threat, then safety areas has to be looked to. Because we have seen this during the international case where the head of state and his deputy were undergoing a case at Dairad, and surely there was that a kind of arrangement of safety of witnesses. And therefore, to me, I would say is a very, 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 very ironical case.
Yeah, and your words are being echoed here by a member of parliament from Makueni, Dan Manzo, who said the first 3 weeks when the matter was going on, she'd been very troubled. Her death is a wake-up call for witness protection in the country. Without witnesses protection, you will never prosecute any corruption case in this country sufficiently. And the details that are emerging here, her whereabouts even before she went missing, apart from CCTV footage showing the victim reporting to work and leaving 3 hours later, her trail went cold. And later on, she was discovered by a herdsman in Ngong on Saturday and appeared to have been tortured. Mr. Musari, what do you make of this one?
First and foremost, my condolences to the family. It's a painful thing to go through for the children, the husband. I want to touch on something, Trix, and that has to do with the Kenyan community, the society at large. I think it's alarming how fast we resort to violent means as a form of dispute resolution. I think it's also alarming how easy it is to get well-trained assassins in this country. It's more often than not this happens. It leaves a lot on the table of Mr. Kinoti. He'll have to run a thorough investigation. I don't want to draw unnecessary conjecture between the case that is running and definitely what has happened, although I think that the DPP does have a role to play, and Mheshimiwa is right. We must have a state witness protection unit that does its work. And the analysis of danger, the analysis of threat should be done before, not after. It's okay now to say that she was in danger, she was stressed, but now we've lost her.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Now, far from the crime and corruption, we have another story here that is quite worrying. COVID-19 vaccine rollout off to a slow start as hesitancy grows. This is on page 8 of the Standard. Medics say they have not been trained or involved in the vaccine rollout, while misinformation is also affecting its uptake. Now, as this is happening, of course, even before the Oxford AstraZeneca jabs and dosages arrived in the country, we were having a lot of skeptics. But now that they have arrived, it is being seen, especially given that this is a very voluntary process. Far from that, and some of these worries are also being backed or perhaps fueled by the situation in other countries, where we're told that Germany and France have suspended that vaccine. President Emmanuel Macron says France has suspended the use of the AstraZeneca coronavirus vaccine out of precaution. So, of course, even far from the fake news and the misinformation, there are some instances where this particular vaccine has been said to cause blood clots. And of course, if you were scared, then this would actually stop you in your tracks. Honorable Gakuya, what say you?
Let me say that every new concept, and especially issue to do with the vaccinating, and with a history that actually we are reading from social media and other information coming in, where you find that there is a case where there is what we call side effects. Those side effects can create fear to anybody, because everybody is a human.
Yes.
And when you find a situation where those who have been vaccinated has some cases to do with what we call blood clots, then you must take a caution before you allow your body to be vaccinated. Though no matter how serious the COVID epidemic is, sometimes you may feel that you better even handle it in the manner that we have been handling it, other than poisoning your body. Because once you engage into that particular kind of vaccination, and then out of that, then you realize that you have poisoned yourself with what you call blood clots, which now, at the end of the day, puts your life off. Then that kind of fear can create a lot of go-slow in terms of this particular exercise. So I wish there was a circular by these suppliers of these vaccines where they were reluctant to commit themselves into any side effects that may come across. And that by that virtue, it tells you they don't want to commit themselves to anything that may arise. And in that particular case, it tells you you are on your own, you just get the jab, but if the jab works against you, it's upon you. Absolutely. So that is the fear, I think, which is, and if we find that people like Germany and France, those big economic countries are taking slow on this. It tells you it is something that we need to have at least a clear analysis. And now that we have our team here, who are researchers, I believe we should not wait from heaven or from anybody else. Our team here should do analysis in this vaccine and tell us completely whether it is surely a healthy commodity that's good to our health. Because surely taking to such a serious risk, to me, it is not very sure. It's not very good to, and it doesn't add very well to the public. I hope that, in fact, our researchers should do enough and give Kenyans a report. Tell us, yes, these are this kind, because I am sure that there are a number of them. They are not outsourced from a single source. And probably maybe the one which is negative is coming from a single supplier. So it's better that we know which one has side effects and which one can be trusted. Yeah.
Now let's see what this Daily Nation is covering on this one, because it's not the same but similar. We're told on page 8, now vaccine apathy dents the war on corruption, and they're also pointing out that fact that AstraZeneca vaccines have been suspended in some countries, those European countries that I mentioned earlier on. And then on page 9, the low COVID vaccine uptake among medics is alarming. I know this is according to Reinhard Munyuk, I know a lot of people who have not taken the jab and fearing it may trigger the worst because they have underlying health issues. If the medics themselves are skeptical, I mean, what can we expect from the common mwananchi? Mr. Musari.
First of all, can I be a bit provocative? I think we're of age as Africans to confess that throughout this entire pandemic, we've had nothing to say. It's unfortunate. We're either waiting for Germany to accept the vaccine or Germany to reject it. But I don't think we're lacking in the intellectual capacity here, not in this country.
We might be not lacking in that capacity, but infrastructurally and in terms of resources, funds.
Well, Trix, you know, you might be surprised, but we have fantastic facilities at Camry. They've been doing fantastic work throughout this process. I think that I would have liked or preferred to have seen Mutahi Kagwe come out for once and said, I'm not particularly comfortable with this vaccine, before Germany did. Yeah. And I want to perhaps look into my crystal ball and say that in a few weeks from now, I think the Kenyan government will have followed suit to what Germany and France have said. And so I think we ought to find our own opinions and follow them. When it comes to confidence, I think, look, we're talking about vaccines. Someone's going to inject it into your body. It's normal. People have to be concerned. This is normal. Is there a way that we can make sure that it's absolutely safe? I don't think so, not within a year's testing of vaccines.
Yes.
The whole world is saying that. But what is the risk to benefit? I think that's what needs to be discussed.
All right. And what of the fact that medics are saying they have not been trained or given any more information about the jab, and therefore this is the basis for some for not wanting to get it?
Look, I want to go back to my tease a bit earlier. Look, if the government has had nothing to say during the pandemic, apart from what it's told, then the medics would likely not be told anything.
Okay.
I think that's how tough I'm going to be this morning.
All right. All right. Now let's shift gears to what's happening in education. And as we can see, this is something that has been happening since last week. On page 2 of the Daily Nation, we're told help HELB protests are a cry for help from broke university students. Most students are neck deep in mobile phone loans, and many others starve for days on end. And now these loans are a hope because they get to live a decent life, they pay their school fees, and of course, like HELB, parents and guardians opt to ignore their children's problem because, of course, they have been pushed to a corner. Honorable Gakuya, what do you think should happen? Because the ministry said that the funds had been processed, so it's just a matter of time before they're dispersed. But in between that, the students are really suffering.
I believe, if I'm not wrong, yesterday it's like there are some disbursements which were made. But even though they were made yesterday, still, Trix, I would like to say that actually our systems must give priorities first. Our priorities, what we call first priorities in terms of the money disbursement.
Okay.
We are aware that at least the exchequer has no enough to disperse. But in terms of disbursement, I believe that actually there are those areas that are very lonely that require immediate attention. And you cannot be able to joke with what we call a learner in a classroom, and especially those learners who are in universities. One is that if you have a daughter there, and you don't want to see your daughter under the life of what we call sponsors, then one has to take care of that particular daughter to make sure that that daughter is in class and actually is well facilitated with issues to do with funds to make her move her exit. In this particular case, you find that actually learners are clearly languishing there. Some of them were confessing that actually they are lasting what we call a night without having a meal. And what do you think will come after that? Because these are the minds that you think that when they are idle minds, then these are devil's workshop. And the next thing you find these students doing, they will just think on how do they move out of the classroom and look for bread outside. And what do you think they will do there? They will start mugging, and they will start doing other things outside there. So to make them safe in the classroom, the HELB should make sure that in fact they release their dues in good time. And then, because I am sure that also HELB is a dependent from the exchequer, the exchequer should make sure that should prioritize dispersing this money in the good time, so that at least our learners should be in the classroom and comfortable.
Yeah, and the picture right there speaks volumes. You're having students right there carrying placards. Some of them are saying "Tuko nja." Now, but there are several survival tactics. Some have taken up side hustles, trying to earn money for themselves so that they can buy meals and take care of themselves. Mr. Musari, what do you make of this situation? Pretty unfortunate, right?
I think first and foremost, tricks, we're either aunts, uncles, fathers, mothers, brothers. It's painful to see members of our larger Kenyan family crying out that they're hungry. It's painful. Secondly, education tends to be extremely rigorous in terms of the amount of body nutrition it consumes, because thinking is actually one of the most consuming elements of life.
Yes.
And to put these young men and women through this kind of stress at this moment, already going through a pandemic, there's serious economic issues at home, but to send them off to school and then starve them again, I think there's obviously more than a moral issue here. It just has to go down to ethos as a country. We cannot allow this to go on. We cannot allow this to go on. You can read more about this on page 2 of the Standard. And on a light note, on the front page of, that's page 2 of the Daily Nation rather, on a lighter, not really lighter note, let's take a look at what's making headlines before we get to what I wanted us to talk about. The situation in Tanzania. We've had people being arrested for spreading fake news about the whereabouts of the president and his health. That is President John Pombe Magufuli. We saw some of the international papers covering that. On page 9, we're told here on the Daily Nation, Tanzania's VP calls for prayers and says anybody can fall sick. That's a very telling comment, don't you think, Honorable Gakuya?
In this particular case, one is that a head of state is a public figure. And Magufuli is a known president who does not work from the office.
Yes.
He works from the ground. He moves out. And once he has vanished from the ground for more than 2 weeks and nobody is uttering a word, to me, that is a big deficit to the people of Tanzania. They need to know where is the head of state. And I don't think that there is anything wrong or crime in people arguing to know the fate of their president.
Yeah.
As we get from the vice president yesterday, that anybody can get ill. Yes, anybody can get ill, but tell us exactly whether our president is ill or not.
Yes, yes.
That's, people just only require this information, and I believe this information is public. It does not require to be hidden any longer.
Mr. Musari?
Yes.
I think there's a very simple solution to the crisis in Tanzania has to do with the police charging people for having rumors about the whereabouts of the president, is that the president should be found and show up.
I mean, their defense would be truth. So I guess if they can prove that he is ill, then they shall be.
But we wish him well.
Yeah, we do wish him well. Now let's take a look at page 3 as we wind up. A very charming little story here. This is the Standard, page 3. Americans, my Bukusu darling story. They're told she came, she saw, and fell in love. This is a missionary woman who came here, 35-year-old, fell in love with a border rider. Now they have 2 kids and happily living in a village in Bungoma County. They say love has no boundaries, and for Albert Wanyonyi, his flame was to be an unlikely American evangelist. Wanyonyi, who dropped out of class 2 and ventured into border business to earn a living, opens up on how he met Carrie Joy, 35, their life together, and a blossoming little family right there, pictured on the front page. Honorable Gakuya, what say you?
Tricks, let me say, life is blind.
Yeah.
And life can emanate from anywhere. And what I can say, there's nothing wrong with that. Because one, we must move out of racism, where we have a notion that you cannot be married there, you cannot be married where and where. I think this is a good example that actually you can marry anybody, because as long as there is a love between you people, you can still marry and reproduce and move on in life. And I don't see anything wrong with that. Only what I can urge is that element of being educated or not is neither here nor there, because you find that when these two good family met, actually there was a difficulties in terms of language, because one could not speak English and the other one could not speak even a single word of Swahili. But on a miracle way, they have just learned how to live together, and I am sure now there are people who are able to communicate to each other, having already 2 number of children out of their marriage. And therefore, me, I wish them well.
Yeah. Mr. Musari, it says it was not, Carrie Joy says, it was not a question of love at first sight. However, God spoke to me while praying and told me Albert would be my future husband. I did not know what would happen. He could not speak English, and I could not attempt speaking Swahili or Bukusu languages. But here they are, a few years on, with 2 babies and a home, and they're making it happen. What say you?
Congratulations, Mr. Wanyonyi.
Yeah.
And to you, Mrs. Wanyonyi, on the 2 kids and the wonderful story. I think it's a joy to hear that story today, especially how gory the headlines are with the loss of Mrs. Wambua, as well as other sad stories.
Yeah.
But what's certain is that beyond the fact that love can't be managed, definitely I would like to say that love brewed in African pot is the best love.
Okay, that's the best way to end this conversation. We're going to take a short break. On the other side, we have Political Point, where we take a look at the very latest in the country as far as politics is concerned, and it has been hot. The front page of the Standard says Jubilee ejects Ruto from top party post. Take a look. We shall be taking a look at that and many other happenings in the country with Jesse Rogers. Do stay tuned.